Okay, so for people who are new, we record, the recording actually gets shared in our next monthly update, and it's also available on the web. So just know that we don't share sensitive information on this call, and it does get shared. So just let everyone know. And we love to see your faces if people are willing to turn on the camera. Of course, if you have a terrible connection and it makes a difference, then we understand. But as many of you know, because I see many of you on here do trainings yourselves, you're trainers. And I know when you're giving a training, especially on Zoom, seeing people's facial expressions is so nice and appreciated. So nothing to be embarrassed about. If you're playing baseball or football at the same time or working out in the gym, then yes, you might want to keep it off, but we'd love to have your attention for these minutes. Great. Thank you, Carlota, for joining us in person. Thank you, Hakeem. Thank you, Stefania. Great to see some faces, because I do see lots of familiar names. But it's always Lily. So nice. Oh my God, what time is it for you? Early. Joining from Ecuador. You know what? If you're able to put without a lot of work under your, you know, where you can change, rename, if you can put the country that you're in, that's always nice to see what countries people are coming from. I know Loli's calling in from Ecuador, so she's in the early hours. We have Ashley here, Elizabeth Roche, who I was getting confused. We have a bunch of Elizabeths today. Nice to see our Norwegian crowd, the Shakti. We have Priya on from Ireland. So if people are able to add your countries, great. So we're going to start. I'm only given 5 minutes to welcome everyone. I see some people are still joining, which is great. We love to have our coordinators as well as our global people and our regional people. Hi, Karanja from Ethiopia. Glad you have Ethiopia there. So this is the first call of the new year. I was just reminded it's the very, very end of January. So it already feels like a month, which it has been for some people. But not everyone celebrates on the 1st of January, so it's only a couple of weeks for people from some of the Asian countries. But welcome to the first call of 2023, and we're hoping that things can only improve because 2022 was a rough year. And in Afghanistan, we had a really terrible end of December, and yeah, let's see what happened. The ERC was just there, but we have 10 minutes at the end for general updates or any other business. So maybe we can hear from some of you. We know Ashley was recently in Iraq, so maybe we can hear a little bit from some of you at the end. And I think we can go ahead and get started. We have a really exciting agenda today, thanks to Shiva, who's always good at organizing everyone. And I think we can put the agenda in the chat for everyone. Good, I see everyone is already introducing themselves in the chat, but we can also add the agenda in case you don't remember. So we're going to start off hearing about the great achievements of our help desk, the GBV AoR Helpdesk from 2022, and then hear about the new products, get a bit of an update, which is run by Joanne Cretan and Hannah Smith. So they're each going to speak to us today. Oh, I love all these new faces popping up. Keep them on, keep them on. So I'm going to, I think, Joanne, you're speaking first. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and then we'll hear from Hannah. So we have time for presentation, and then you can ask some questions. I hope all of you are familiar with the help desk, but if you're not, then you will be after this presentation. So over to you, Joanne.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, and for the invitation to speak today and join you all. It's always a very welcome opportunity. I'm Joanne Crichton. I'm the Help Desk's Program Director, and I'll hand on to my colleague Hannah Schmidt to introduce herself and get us started. Thanks. Over to you.
Thanks, Joanne. Yes, so hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today and have this opportunity to present to you. As already mentioned, my name is Hannah Smith, and I'm the manager of the GBV AoR Helpdesk and a technical specialist in GBV and safeguarding at Social Development Direct. And I'm here with my colleague, Joanne Creighton, the program director for the help desk and a senior technical expert for GBV in emergencies with Social Development Direct. So today we'll be speaking to you about some of the help desk's highlights and outputs from 2022, as well as providing information about how you can contact us if you should need support. So if we could go to the next slide, I think many of you might have heard from us before, but for those that may be unfamiliar with the GBV AoR Helpdesk, please allow me to give just a brief introduction. So basically, what is the GBV AoR Helpdesk? It is a free and confidential technical research and advice service for humanitarian actors working on gender-based violence risk mitigation, prevention, and response in emergencies. The help desk is managed by Social Development Direct on behalf of the GBV area of responsibility. And the GBV AoR Helpdesk provides support to a wide range of humanitarian actors, including GBV coordinators, managers, and specialists. So if we go to the next.
1 second, Hannah, I feel like there's noise coming from someone that doesn't have their mute on.
How different is it from the
Can people please turn the mute on if you're speaking? Great, thank you. I hope that worked. If it didn't, yeah, we tried. Okay, go ahead.
That's okay. Thanks, Jennifer. I'm also in the office, so I could be from my side as well, to be fair. But yes, let me just dive back in. So basically, I thought it could be good to just give a brief overview on some of the specific services that the help desk can offer. So firstly, there's the rapid technical support, which is the GBV AoR Helpdesk rapid technical advice and support on GBV coordination and programming in line with international standards, guidelines, and best practice.
Okay.
We also offer GBV humanitarian orientation support, which is a type of limited short-term coaching support to national and local GBV responders. We work with national and local women-led organizations, movements, and groups, matching inquirers with a member of the GBV AoR Helpdesk roster to provide a targeted number of remote surge technical support and guidance sessions or materials on areas of support requested. So for example, humanitarian funding and coordination mechanisms. And we discuss the request directly with the requester and seek to produce an outline for the type of support we can provide to match that need. Then there's also the research. So the help desk can carry out global literature and evidence reviews and produce high quality written reports, which highlight best practice in GBV, women's protection in emergencies programming, and signpost the reader with relevant tools and resources. There's a few more things that we can also provide on the next slide. Which are research, learning, and evidence digests. So these are field-friendly thematic summaries of key evidence, resources, and tools in relation to GBV programming and other sectoral areas, such as livelihoods and cash transfer programming. And we also prepare and issue guidance notes, which are in-depth guidance notes on best practice in GBV programming and policy engagement in relation to current and emerging issues. So that's a brief summary, but the GBV AoR Helpdesk is a service and a resource which can help GBV responders seeking to ensure their work aligns with feminist principles and international standards and guidelines. So I'll now hand over to Joanne to talk us through some of our highlights from 2022.
Thanks so much, Hannah. So let me give you a little bit of a flavor of our work from 2022 and the achievements to date. As you'll see from this slide, the GBV AoR Helpdesk is truly a global resource and service. And in 2022, up until the 13th of December, this data covers, we received 125 requests. We produced 27 knowledge products, and we received requests from 42 countries. So you can see that there's a diverse range of people served and at different levels of working at the local, regional, and global level. And also that we produce and serve people that in a range of ways through different types of query that Hannah has already outlined. So, for example, we produced, we had 51% of our queries were micro queries, 14% were rapid program support queries, and 10% were short research reports. Those were the top 3 categories, and the rest were other types of query. The conflict in Ukraine did spark a number of requests for different types of GBV, i.e. technical research and advice to support the humanitarian response in country and also across Europe. And so Ukraine submitted the highest number of query requests for a single country, while regionally the majority of requests originated from the East and Southern Africa region in 2022. And as I mentioned, queries came from a range of agencies, UN agencies, GBV responders and specialists working with NGOs and INGOs, as well as donor agencies. Next slide, please. We always conduct a short post survey with our help desk service users to help us to understand how we can continuously improve our services. And on the screen, you'll see a snapshot of some of the feedback that we received throughout 2022. And again, I won't read these all out, but you'll get a sense of the different types of actor that we served, the different types of output that we produced for them, and how, what ways we were able to support them and progress their work and support their GBV efforts. Next slide, please. So now a little bit more about our specific product output in 2022, in case this may be of interest and help to you in your work. And at the end of the presentation, my colleague Hannah will signpost you to where you can find this information online. But in brief, we put together a number of resources, as I said, 27 in total, but I haven't listed them all out, but here's a sample. We produced a learning brief on the risks and opportunities for adopting bystander intervention approaches in humanitarian settings. We also put out an explainer document around GBV risks, food insecurity, and the integrated food security classification system. In other words, sort of what are the basics that food security and GBV actors need to know. Also, a guidance note on exit strategies in the event of premature and permanent closure of GBV programs in an emergency, as well as an annotated bibliography with a specific focus on GBV risk mitigation and inclusion and participation. Additionally, we produced annotated bibliographies of GBV IE resources available in Arabic, French, and Spanish. Next slide, please. Also released and published in 2022, we produced a resource to aid understanding of the core functions and differences between women and girls safe spaces and one-stop centres. This is a relatively new publication and is receiving quite a lot of traction at this time. It seems to be a much needed resource. In addition, we supported 3 country-level secondary data reviews to support the GBV subclusters for Ukraine, Lebanon, and Niger. And this type of support was provided very much in coordination with the global AoR coordination team and also the GBV subclusters in country, so that we identify contexts in need of this specific type of technical support. Furthermore, we produced a literature review of promising practices in relation to GBV risk mitigation in private and community-based accommodation, and this was linked to the Ukraine crisis. Next slide, please. And also a femicide in emergencies learning brief was produced, as well as an annotated bibliography providing an overview of the relevant literature, evaluations, and programmatic examples for engaging boys as allies in GBV prevention. Plus, we trialed the production of a new product for the GBV AoR Helpdesk, which was a series of tip sheets related to GBV in emergencies related programming aspects. And these were released and shared during the 16 days of activism for the elimination of violence against women and girls. Next slide, please. And so far in 2023, we've released 2 new written resources already. One, a learning brief which builds on and is complementary to our previous releases on the topic of technology-facilitated gender-based violence. And this new learning brief focuses on the risks of technology-facilitated GBV to publicly visible women, for example, women's rights activists and human rights defenders. And the second release is a guidance note which outlines considerations for GBV service providers when they are requested to provide GBV case management to women and girls experiencing IPV who are in a detention or a prison setting. And of course, there's much more to come in 2023, but now I'll hand back to Hannah to lead us on. Thanks.
Thanks, Joanne. So if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to speak to some of the languages that the help desk works in and on. And so at this time, we have experts on the roster who speak English, French, Spanish, and Arabic. And as such, all of our services can be provided in all 4 languages. And the help desk also continues to progress translations of already existing and key products. So on the next slide, we've just compiled, thank you, we've just compiled a list
And I think you froze. But you can see the list, I guess, on the screen, which ones have been translated.
Shall I pick up for Hannah, Jennifer?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. So on the screen is a summary of the key products that we translated in 2022. As you can see, they span a thematic range and different language combinations, but include COVID remote guidance, humanitarian financing opportunities, and technology facilitated GBV. And all of these are available on the GBV AoR website and the Social Development Direct website. And we have some more translations forthcoming for the rest of imminently, 2 more papers, and then more to come in 2023 as well. Hannah, are you back?
Yes, that was the worst timing ever. Sorry about that. I just lost my Wi-Fi, but I'm back. And thank you for covering that information, Joanne. I think if it's okay to move to the next slide, I can just speak of how to access our resources. And effectively, these are the main access points online and on social media. So I'll go through them slowly, but all of our resources are on the GBV AoR website, as well as the Social Development Direct website, and can be used using keywords as a search function for specific resources, including those that we've mentioned today. One of the best ways to get updated on newly published resources is by following us on social media. We have a presence on Twitter at the accounts listed here, so the GBV AoR1, as well as the FD Direct Global Twitter account. And we also share published resources through LinkedIn. And if ever you're struggling to find a resource or would like to find out more about any of our existing resources, we can always be reached by email. So I'll just go, oh, and thank you. We share published resources through the GBV COP as well, Community of Practice. So just as a reminder, if you'd like to access the GBV AoR Helpdesk services, you can contact us by email at inquiries@gbviehelpdesk.org.uk. We're available 9:30 to 5:30 GMT Monday to Friday, and we'll respond to any emails within 24 hours. And otherwise, thank you so much for listening, and please don't hesitate to contact us in case of need. And I know Joanne and I are both open to questions if anyone should have any about any of the resources or any of the other points that we mentioned today.
Can I just add, there was a document that came out in 2019, which has now regained interest and gotten a lot of traction, which is on the added value of working on localization with women-led organizations. So that's something that's come out. So it's good to go back and look at resources that might seem like they're a couple years old now, but are definitely very relevant. There's in like what was mentioned with the annotated bibliographies of what tools exist in your language. And, we have tried to encourage, all of our partners who are publishing something that they already translate into the different languages. But also if there's something really critical, we've looked to see how we can also get it translated. So last year we had a number of items translated. And just to also say that the GBV AoR Helpdesk is supported by Safe from the Start funding BPRM to UNICEF. So this is one of the supports that UNICEF provides to the GBV AoR in kind. Any questions from anyone or any comments? If you've used the Helpdesk and you have a comment you'd like to make, you can write it in the chat, or you can take off your microphone and say it. Amira is giving us, saying that our translation into Arabic is pretty good. So that's good to know. It takes a lot of work to do these presentations. So I really hope that people can also not just use them, but share them with your colleagues, because it's not just somebody literally translating. It also requires a lot of work for a technical expert to go through them and make sure that the GBV technical language being used meets the vocabulary that we use. And that's very challenging in many languages to find that person. And in the past, it's been a lot of people who are the people on our teams from our different partner agencies who've kindly volunteered their time, and we're trying to find a better solution to that. So if you have great solutions, let us know as well. Kira, you wanted to say something?
Yes.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Jennifer and colleagues. It's really nice to be here in this meeting. First of all, Happy New Year to all of you, and hope you had a good Christmas with family. I think this is really useful to learn that what are the key products and the guidelines that have been developed in 2022, which we can use at the country office level. I just want to also request, like, we do have access to these guidelines, but is there any forum that we can also discuss certain things on the operationalization of GBV AoR at the country office levels? Like, I'll give you a little background. I've been, when I looked at the slide on the request, I assumed that the 50% of the request would be from me accessing and contacting colleagues that have worked in other regions, particularly Middle East, like Jennifer, and in South Asia. So coming back to that, like, for example, we know that a lot of work is being invested at the country office level on operationalization. But, like, for example, if we need some guidance on the mapping exercise or the service directory, like the referral pathways, and things like that, how we can connect more with our peers or with our colleagues who are working at the country office level, if that's something we can improve in 2023. Secondly, when you mentioned that there was a guideline on humanitarian financing opportunities, is there any plan to have something similar for humanitarian development nexus? Like, for example, I will also mention briefly later on the key efforts that we are doing at the Northeast Nigeria level, like tapping on donors not only for the humanitarian but also for development, because a lot of countries will be moving from humanitarian to development. So humanitarian financing is usually through OCHA, through SURF, or humanitarian pool funds, right? But while I was doing that exercise at the Nigeria level, there were certain challenges that I was thinking to have it from the region who can help us with, for example, a donor database that we have on donors with donor priorities by different development partners for GBV. And then also if there is any knowledge product or guidelines in the pipeline for localization or durable solutions, like given the context of Northeast Nigeria, a lot of there are like working groups on localization and durable solutions here. And again, given that this is something that has come out of the World Humanitarian Summit, so that's something in the plan. And lastly, how are we sharing it with all these things with the global protection sector? Like very quickly, the donor meeting that we had last week, I had like with the support of a local partner, they had a very nice, powerful video on climate change, impact of climate change, and linkages with gender-based violence. But the protection colleagues were like really unaware on what is the linkage between, climate change and gender-based violence, given that this Nigeria Lake Chad initiative, I mean, it's quite clear that because of climate change, Lake Chad has reduced, and that has led to negative coping mechanisms by women and girls, and of course, men and boys as well, right? So I was just also thinking, how are we all also engaged in protection sector in particular who have no clue about the linkages? And it has a trickle-down effect, like at our end, that we need to do a lot of advocacy, telling them about, like actually teaching them on the basics of these linkages. So that is from my side, and over to you. Thank you.
Well, that's quite a few questions. And I think some of them the help desk can answer, and some of them would be us, and some of them we can just have a conversation later. But really, the dissemination is, part of this community that's on this call. Like, we really want you to share it with your subcluster members. If you go to the protection cluster meeting and there's a relevant document, then you can share it. It's great if you can say something during the meeting and then send it out with the minutes so that all the protection actors receive it. We've presented on this issue in different global platforms, and we can talk more about Christine Appio, someone who's been working on preparedness and climate change, and recently attended the food security sector annual event where WFP and FAO are. So there's a lot happening in some of these different areas. But also, if there's a specific question that you have, you can ask the help desk, and they will actually get in touch with you to help frame the question, to make sure that they answer the question that you have, rather than getting it wrong, answering something else, and then after a lot of work coming back and finding out that actually your question was slightly different. So that's one of the pluses of asking a question. Like, they will come and get in touch with you, and if there's already a document responding to the question you have, they will share that information with you right away, so that not to reinvent the wheel. But over to you, Joanne or Hannah, if you want to respond to some of the other issues raised.
Thanks so much for the questions here, and thanks, Jennifer. I think, Jennifer, you've done quite a comprehensive job in answering, but I really appreciate that. Just minor points in addition. I think in terms of the coordination and operationalizing, can't say that word today. Of course, you know, it's really important to work with your local in-country colleagues through the GBV subcluster, and also seeking support of your Riga. The services that the help desk provides are very much complementary to those sources of support as well, in support. So we're here as an extra support, and we can link you to our roster experts where there's that need. So particularly in relation to the localization durable solutions question that you raised here, if that's something of specific interest, then please, for Northeast Nigeria, then please do feel free to contact us specifically, and we can talk that through and assign you an expert who can work on that piece. And finally, as Jennifer said, you know, we can do what we can to put out our resources through the COP, through the different websites and different social media channels, but we are very much a global community on this call. And so part of why myself and Hannah come here to speak to you to raise awareness of the different types of products is that not only do we hope that they're directly helpful to yourselves, but also to your colleagues and partners that you work with. So please don't hesitate to contact us if you should have seen any of the list of resources or publications today, and that you would like us to send you on directly if you aren't able to access them through the websites. We'll be happy to do so. Thank you.
And just to say also, you have, you know, if you're calling in from the field, you also have the Riga teams. We'll be hearing from our IMs right after this, but who also are working on some of these issues in your region. And I see that Oswald wrote about the community of practice. And similar to this, it depends on the GBV community to make a function. So in order for documents to be shared, it's important that everyone on this call shares them. And it's the same with the community of practice. The idea of the community of practice is precisely to generate conversations, to raise issues in that space, and then it's for GBV specialists to respond. So, you know, the idea is you can raise a query that you would like to hear from your peers, and people from the global level, people from other country offices will then enter into a dialogue. But it only works if everyone on this call engages when a new conversation is presented. And then, of course, you know, for the coordinators, these are some of the things that happen at our annual coordination meeting where there's an issue that people feel really strongly about it. Then it's good for you to raise it to us to consider putting it on the agenda for the coordination annual meeting. So I will leave it there, but thank you for your points, Kira. Because of time, I'm going to suggest that we move on. If you have specific other kinds of questions, you can write to Joanne and Hannah directly. If you have any problem figuring out how to access the help desk, you can also, Shiva, who is the one organizing these calls, or Stephanie, people from our AoR team can help you also figuring out how to navigate the website if you have any challenges in that area. So now we're going to move on to Libya, which I think people are aware that there's been deactivation officially of clusters starting in Iraq, and now Libya is in a transition period. And Timitope, who's our regional IM based in Cairo, is currently on mission, and he and Omar Farog, who's our GBV coordinator in Libya, are going to talk about the transition process that started in 2023, and it's about deactivating the clusters and transitioning the work that's being done under the clusters over to the government, which is about sustainability. So we're going to hear from both of them, and then have a little bit of time for questions following that. So over to both of you. In Libya, well, actually, I'm not sure if they're in Libya or Tunisia, but you can say. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone. Good day. Thanks Jennifer for the opportunity to present regarding the mission to support the Libya response. So So basically, I'll talk a bit about the mission and also about the deactivation process, and then I'll hand over to Omar, who will be able to provide a more robust overview and summary of what the transition is, the deactivation, and what the plans are for the new cooperation framework. So, so basically, like Jennifer already said, my mission was to support the Libya coordination team, mostly in the area of information management, and also considering to be able to provide guidance and support also during this transition period, in case there are any new systems or new recommendations that we might have to support, to make sure that information management goes smoothly even during the transition to the new framework. So the main focus areas of the mission were to support response monitoring. So basically to also, firstly, to update the response monitoring for 2022 and make sure that the dashboard is updated, the information is updated so that the coordination team can use it to evaluate the 2023 response and also to archive that for future use and information. So far we've been able to complete some part of this. So we've updated the tool, and we've updated the dashboards, and then we were able to review and spot some places where there were some inconsistencies. And then we're looking for ways to resolve those inconsistencies. And then once that is done, we'll be able to finalize and publish the dashboard for Libya GBV response for 2022. Also, we looked at the service mapping tool and we tried to optimize it using a similar, still an Excel based, but we created more validation criteria, and then we also try to include Arabic translation. So it's easy to use just one tool, and you have both English and Arabic translation. So it cuts across both national actors and international actors. So we are also considering like what it's going to be like in the next under the new Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. So we plan to finalize that soon and then roll that out. And also as part of, we try to engage with other actors to find out what the situation or what the expectations are going to be on the, like what the new approaches are going to be under the new framework. So the cluster approach was deactivated finally last week on the 19th of January. So after that, we've been having discussions with OCHA, REACH, DTM, and I think we also plan to reach out to UNHCR to discuss, to find out okay, what the current situations is, what the current situations are, what are the plans, especially with a focus on information management, but then Omar extensively on overall discussions as well. So from the IM point, discussions with OCHA reveal that although under the new sustainable the Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, there's going to be a data analysis and assessment working group. But at the moment, at this time, given that it's still the transition is just happened last week, basically. So there's no strong structure or framework yet. So, however, OCHA said they'll be continuing with supporting the humanitarian pillar up till the end of the year. So basically, the activity info response monitoring tool is still going to be in place, and they'll still be providing support to humanitarian actors. So internally for GBV, what we did was to have discussions, and then which is still ongoing, and see if there needs to update any part of the GBV indicators, for example. And then we've discussed with OCHA, and they've agreed to open up the portal to us at a certain time, and then we can make those updates. And we are sure that GBV projects or programs can still continue to be monitored during the year until there's clarity regarding the M&E or the data analysis framework for the Nexus, Nexus becomes clear, and then something, maybe a new tool or a new approach is developed. But that's something that will happen as the year, much later in the year. So for now, we're still continuing with the activity info, but we'll be making some inputs to update. I think Omar will also speak on that a bit, because we've looked at the new, the core pillars for the pillars under the new framework, and then where GBV might fall in there and how we could come up with some indicators, but that's still, we're still having those discussions, but haven't finalized. So we also had discussions with REACH, especially because of the MSNA, and then also because of some initiatives that started last year. So for example, REACH is currently conducting, or they'll start a GBV assessment, I think next month. Yeah, they'll start next month, but the initiative was kickstarted last year. So we try to find out what the assessment landscape will be like, and how we could ensure that GBV will continue to be mainstreamed in any joint analysis or joint assessments that might be conducted. And then we also had positive feedback from REACH, who confirmed that there will still be, although there won't be an MSNA for 2023, they are looking at conducting something like a nexus severity assessment in collaboration with UNHCR, who also have a strong mandate in that area. And then we already let them know that we'll be in constant communication with them in case we need to mainstream GBV in any joint assessments or analysis. But in the meantime, we also took the time to discuss extensively on the GBV assessment, and with a focus on how, because in the Libya team, we are also conducting a voices from Libya, so a qualitative assessment to capture the voices and the views of the voices of women, especially regarding GBV in Libya. So given that the GBV assessment is going to very likely come after the voices, the focus was on how to ensure that the REACH GBV assessment complements the voices from Libya that is being conducted by the GBV coordination, former GBV subsector, basically. So with that, we agreed to share tools and share feedback and share resources and make sure that eventually we might even have a joint presentation, or to work and collaborate, basically, and to make sure that the two assessments speak to each other. The REACH assessment is quite promising, especially given the fact that it's going to focus on service quality component, and then a safety mapping component, which are areas that are not strongly covered by the voices. So eventually, we believe the two assessments are going to complement each other and be able to give a good information and overview of what the GBV situation is like in Libya. So discussions are still going to be ongoing about that. And then lastly, we also met with DTM, IOM, the DTM team, basically. And we reviewed, so last year some efforts were made to incorporate GBV recommendations in the DTM tool, to also increase the availability of GBV data in intersectoral tools and data sources. So I think the DTM agreed last year, that's around June, to incorporate the GBV recommendations. So basically what we did was to follow up and find out if those changes had been incorporated, and then they confirmed that in the next round that will be published in February, the round 44 is going to reflect the inputs from GBV. And although they are not open to any more changes now, also because of the transition, we'll be in continuous discussions with them in case there are any new developments, and GBV would definitely be mainstream. So currently, at this time, there doesn't seem to be very clear direction per se regarding what the analysis and data analysis and assessment is going to be like under the new framework. However, I believe that as the indication we get is that most humanitarian partners are still continuing their operations, and then some humanitarian projects are still ongoing until there's much more clarity, and then maybe more systems, and then we can there'll be more clarity basically on how to regarding the transition. So at this point, I'll hand over to Omar, who will speak more about the deactivation and what GBV is going to look like under the new, not the end, but I mean what the plans are under the new framework. So over to you, Omar.
Yes. Thank you so much, Toby, and thank you so much, Jennifer and colleague. As of January, we can say that in Libya, the UN officially transferred to or operationalized Nexus approach. And based on the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, as you can see here, I just want to provide some brief, and then I will tell you what are the implications and what are the measures that we are trying to put in place in order to ensure that protection at large, and GBV specifically, is not left behind while transitioning from purely humanitarian work to nexting to the development and work with other counterparts. The framework is formulated under 5 outcomes, as you can see, 1 outcome, 2, 3, 4, 5. During the consultation, and the consultation process has been done in coordination with government, UN agencies, international NGOs, local NGOs, and also the marginalized community. And as part of the coordination, we were also part of the the consultation process. And we were, during that time, I was representing the GBV subsector coordination in this, and under the outcome 3, there is sub-output where child protection and GBV, we met together, and then we ensure that at least there is an output for child protection and GBV coordination. And that's why you will find us here under this strategy or under output 3, under outcome 3, under output 1, 3, 1, 3. Next slide. So this, if you see here on the output and the under outcome number 3 here, and the outcome number 3, there is basically the health, education, protection, and social protection. So here we will find the majority of GBV related coordination and GBV programming intervention. Yes, we tried as much as possible also to ensure that GBV is also well taken care when it's come to other outcomes and other outputs, but mainly we are focusing here under this outcome number 3, which is all contributing to the collective outcome, which is, if you can see also the collective outcome are talking to, let's say, humanitarian, because the collective outcome number 1 is talking about a durable solution for IDPs, and the collective outcome is talking about creating a conducive environment for migrants, at least 65% of them. So this is the overall structure, how it looks like, and where potentially where we can be situated at the coordination. Following this, operationalizations of the Nexus in Libya, certain steps and measures were taken to ensure that GBV and, or let's say, protection in general has been considered. The process started at the end of the quarter 4 in 2022. In the beginning, we were not clear on how the situation will continue. So under the leadership of the protection, we reached out to the RC and to the humanitarian country team, and then we say that the process is not like ready. We are afraid that protection and GBV might be left behind. And then after numbers of meetings, they settled to have to agree to kind of protection transition working group that will be working after the deactivations of the sector cluster in Libya, and that is what now is taking place. And the purpose of the protection transition is to ensure that protection issues are taken care of. And if there is any gaps within the structure or within the outcome to present by after the sale, after 3 months to the humanitarian coordinate, to the humanitarian advisory group, with a clear recommendation roadmap on how to address this gap. So following the deactivation, all the function of the intersector coordination, it has been transmitted to the Humanitarian Development Nexus Advisory Group, if you can see here on the top of the screen to the left. And then there is the Humanitarian Advisory Team. OSHA team will be or has been transformed into Humanitarian Advisory Team, and they will be supporting those working group to the left of the on my left and the right of the screen, like the Access Working Group, Data, and the Rapid Response Mechanism and Area-Based Group Coordination. Here on the right side, you will see the traditional UN Working Group, Gender Use and Communication Working Group, and other communication. Down here, you will see the Protection Transition Group, and the Protection Transition Group will be functioning for 3 months, as I stated, and will be working in close coordination with the Humanitarian Development Nexus and contributing to the collective outcome 1 and a collective outcome 2. Here, at the most right, you will see the result group number 3. The result group number 3, this is here where we want to put the coordination function for the GBV and for the child protection, and that will be the part of the proposal that the protection transition group will be presented to the humanitarian advisory group. If you look into the document of a part of that also, they develop instead of humanitarian need, they develop humanitarian overview, and they will continue to produce the humanitarian overview. We were consulted during the process, and we made sure that GBV is reflected and is well reflected into the humanitarian overview. There is a paragraph about the GBV. It's not by sectors overall overview of Libya context, but you will find that GBV is well addressed in this overview. So maybe that will be continuing during this transition, which is my class. I think the plan is to last by the end of 2024. So yeah, this is basically how it looks. So we will be here under the result group 3. That's what we are looking for. I say there is certain measures has been taken to ensure the protection that has not been left behind. Part of it is inclusion of the formulation of protection transition group. I mean acknowledgement in the document, in the strategy document, that there is a residual protection issues and humanitarian issues that all people have to work together to address them. Also, having this result group for the coordination of other function. Additionally, the document ensure that they will ensure the centrality of the protection throughout the document. And also part of the exercise now, we are revisiting the document to see where areas or the protection concern, where it has been addressed, whether addressed, for example, in the collective outcome or in the outcome number 1 or 2 or 3. We are mapping those outcomes, and then we look into a specific protection concern that has been raised before. For example, let's say the coordination, this is where we are proposing to put them. Another issue, for example, housing, I think is addressed under and housing and land property has been addressed in the outcome 2, and this way. So all the protection and GBV concern, we are going to map them and to see whether we'll address under this structure, under this framework, and if there is any gap, we will highlight the gap within this 3 months, and then we'll see the way forward. So that is it in short. Now a little bit from the beginning of, from the last quarter of 2022, I think now we are having a little bit kind of clarity on what is going to happen. But so far, some challenges we are facing, but hoping that by the end of these 3 months, at least we'll have a very clear picture. Not to forget to mention, we also part of this at the coordination, we engage in a number of meetings to see and take note of the member concern. One of the concern that they really insisted of having, a separate coordination forum with a task force, GBV, with a task force working group, but mainly for the GBV actor to ensure that there is really a safe and conducive environment where they can discuss GBV issues. Also, they insisted or they show high commitment to ensure that task force like GBV case management task force should also continue and should be only including only exclusive only for the case manager and not to be extended to all other member of the humanitarian development at large. So this is generally the dialogue. These are the steps that we are taking to ensure that GBV is not left behind. Those are the precautions and measures that have been also taken from the senior management within the UN country team and the protection within Libya. Thank you so much. Over to you. And if there is any question, clarification, I'm ready to respond to that. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you both for that very comprehensive presentation. And I know that you also had some conversations with Iraq to look at these different issues. And I know with the Global Cluster Coordination Group, we've also been sharing different documents because there hasn't been so much experience in official deactivation. And we know that some of these processes seem to have happened very quickly. So we're also, already looking at how to support the situation in Iraq as well as Libya, but also lessons learned so that we can look at how to improve at the process of deactivating and transitioning. I'm afraid, Omar, both of you fit into your time frame, but didn't leave any time for questions and answers. So I'm going to ask people, if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that Temitope and Omar can come back to you, either writing the response in the chat or by email. And maybe both of you can share your emails in the chat. So if people have specific questions concretely, they can come to you. So I'm going to move on, sorry about that, to the next presentation, which I'm not sorry about. We have an exciting presentation that is going to, you have two Elizabeth who are going to be talking, just to confuse you, one with a Z and one with an S, Elizabeth and Elizabeth. I thought we had actually made a mistake and written Liz Pender instead of Liz Roach, and then I found out, no, actually we get 2 for 1. And Christine Heckman as well, who are going to be talking about the institutionalization of GBV risk mitigation. If you were at SVRI, you might have already heard some of this, but it's very exciting, and you're fortunate to have 3 presenters. And we will, I don't know, Christine, are you the one starting, or who is starting? I see you have Liz and Liz, so maybe Christine is not presenting at all, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna be starting. Thanks, Jennifer. It's great to see so many.
Elizabeth, can introduce yourself first, and before you speak, and then go into the presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Rush, and I'm a GBV specialist with UNICEF. And just to say, it's really great to be on this call today to talk about a new project that we're undertaking in partnership with USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Affairs. on the institutionalization of GBV risk mitigation. And as Jen said, we've been doing a little bit of the talking tour on this one. So hopefully for those of you for whom this is a bit of a repeat, we'll have some new nuggets and information to provide. I'm joined today by Liz Pender and Tatiana McConan from BHA, and I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves and discuss a bit the genesis of this project and why we thought this was a good moment to focus in on institutionalization. Over to you, Liz.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm certain I know many of you, not as many as I like. My name is Liz Pender, and as Elizabeth noted, I am with the Safe and Accountable Programming Team at BHA, which is a team within BHA that holds the mandate, among other things, of GBV risk mitigation. I will talk a little bit about the genesis of this, but I wanted to give my colleague Titina an opportunity to introduce herself as well. Titina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Titina McConan. I recently joined BHA Safe and Accountable Programming Team as an advisor as well, and work very closely with Liz. It's nice to see everyone. Thank you.
Do you know what's cool?
So with that, just before I hand over to Elizabeth and Christine, if she's on for the presentation, for those of you who are not aware of how BHA approaches GBV risk mitigation, we've really elevated efforts to prioritize this particular aspect of GBV work. And just as an example, the fact that we've created a new team entirely that is, separate and distinct from our protection team, which focuses on GBV programming, right? So we kind of pulled it out into its own team with its own kind of focus set of advisors. And we really do, we collaborate very closely with our GBV programming colleagues, but our focus really is looking at how we can be better, how we can be more intentional about the integration of GBV risk mitigation across all of our programming, in addition to the really critical and life-saving aspects of our GBV programming. So in addition to the sort of elevation of the team, creation of the team, which is growing. As you can see, Titina is a brand new advisor on the team and is an incredibly welcome addition. For those of you who have not seen the BHA emergency application guidelines, we also have increased our expectations and requirements of partners, which we outline in our emergency application guidelines. And Titina and I, along with our other colleagues on the SAP team, part of our responsibility is to review every single application that is submitted to BHA to make sure that partners are really intentionally embedding these requirements into their programming. We've also developed some guidance and some monitoring for our own field-based colleagues in an effort to build their own engagement on this issue and to really dive deeply into this issue with partners when they're monitoring programming and just give them some ideas of what to view. Finally, on the genesis of this specific project, the SAP team has a small and mighty budget that we use to support strategic level initiatives, kind of global level initiatives that we want to see funded and resourced because we see them as being able to really kind of change how the humanitarian community of practice approaches key aspects of work. And we see these projects as being really instrumental in really kind of changing how we do business, right? So this project is one of those strategic awards, one of those strategic projects that we see as being really essential to informing the humanitarian community of practice, changing systems and changing how we do this work. So with that, I will hand back over to Elizabeth, and I see Christine is chatting away, but Elizabeth, over to you, unless there's something else that you'd like me to highlight.
No, that's great, Liz. Thank you so much. And I think it's a really good segue into kind of what we're going to discuss today. I'm going to focus in a little bit on UNICEF's journey with institutionalization, but obviously this takes place in and is motivated by what's happening within the humanitarian ecosystem with donors like BHA and other kind of streams within the humanitarian field that we're motivated by, but also contributing to. So our journey begins a little bit with the update of the revised GBV guidelines and, you know, UNICEF's role in leading the rollout of those guidelines, and really seeing that as an amazing launching pad for the proliferation of new and exciting programming across sectors. But at the same time, really had coming to this realization that programming was always going to remain ad hoc and reliant on those key allies across sectors to really get that uptake, unless we embedded risk mitigation within institutional structures in key strategies and processes. So it was really kind of this awareness and desire to increase the sustainability and make it GBV risk mitigation something that just happens. It's a non-negotiable, something that's really anchored in our systems. This happened also at the same time that there was this exciting movement within the humanitarian ecosystem. We had the centrality of protection. We had opportunities that arose with all the focus on PSEA, the Oslo conference call to action, and a lot of the donor advocacy and support that Liz was talking about. And this really provided opportunities for us to use that to leverage our internal systems and in turn to really try to influence those opportunities to make sure that GBV risk mitigation kind of was hooked onto those as well. So kind of what is institutionalization? It's a big word, but I think we've kind of come up with an easy definition, hopefully. And really it's anchoring GBV risk mitigation into systems, structures, and processes. This is really kind of a twin track with programming. So the goal remains the same, safer and more accessible programming for women and girls, more effective programming across all sectors. And institutionalization is kind of that underpinning, that foundation, the systems and structures that underpin the programmatic work, that allow the programmatic work to happen. So I think, you know, one of the things that we've done is really look at all the different entry points for where you can address institutionalization, really for affecting sustainable change. And, you know, we've looked across the board at kind of all these areas. You know, we've looked at our partnership agreements. We've looked at how we can integrate GBV risk mitigation into communications. How, you know, we can look at funding and how we structure funding and strategies and policies. So the green waves are areas where we've had some success, but where we probably also need some further work. And then the stars are a little bit kind of the areas where we've had you know, a lot of what we think is a lot of success and seen some really exciting and tangible improvements in institutionalization. I know we're a bit limited for time, so I'm just going to focus in on one key highlight. And this is related to UNICEF's strategic plan. So in our current strategic plan, we have an indicator under what is one of our change strategies that really outlines a minimum set of GBV risk mitigation actions. And with this indicator, our country offices are required to report on whether they're meeting these core sets of requirements. And I think that one of the real advantages of this is that it gives a lot of visibility to what's happening within country programs and how much they're doing the GBV risk mitigation work. And it also provides this platform for advocacy so that we can really see where to focus efforts going forward. So just quickly, I'm not going to go deep into this, but there's a tier 1 core. So these are things that to meet the indicator, you have to be doing all of these. So this is GBV risk analysis, consultations with women and girls, risk and mitigation programming in at least 2 sectors. And then there's a tier 2, which is a little bit more optional, but really desired, which is really looking at things like safety audits, risk mitigation training, risk mitigation and policies and guidance. And the thing that we really are excited about with this is that it sits within cross-cutting change strategies. So the accountability really rests with the entire country office. So it's not, you know, just the GBV folks it's not the GBV folks who are reporting on this. It's really across sectors and really looking at UNICEF as a whole and how we're integrating GBV risk mitigation across the programming. So, you know, one of the things that we've been thinking about a lot is how we approach institutionalization. And I would have to say, kind of at the beginning of our journey, we were seizing any opportunity that came along, any friendly face, any key ally who wanted to hear more and work with us on GBV risk mitigation. We really just seized that opportunity. And I think that's been a real driver of a lot of the work. But as we've gone along, we've also done a little bit more structured mapping of internal processes, looking at kind of what the key policies and structures are and kind of targeting them, and then reviewing where we get success and where we hit roadblocks. I would say that, you know, if in the beginning, 90% of our efforts were seizing ad hoc opportunities, now maybe that's, you know, half of the time we're seizing opportunities. I think it's really important to just kind of grab what you can. But we are also balancing this with more kind of structured approaches to institutionalization. So just to say, you know, we've also kind of thought about what UNICEF's unique role is and how to create synergies and create momentum across different levels of the organization. So really looking at the opportunity that's provided by kind of top-down efforts to set standards and guidance and tools, but also the momentum that comes from country offices really taking things on and providing really great examples in innovation and providing intensive support to really make those bottom-up efforts possible. At the same time, we lead 4 clusters and areas of responsibility. So we're trying to also use that as a real leverage point to influence our programmatic sectors and vice versa, really finding things that are happening within our programmatic sectors and using that to influence UNICEF clusters and seeing how to take that across the humanitarian community. So here, this is a bit of a slide that kind of looks at our thinking around sustainability and impact, and noting that opportunities come in multiple forms. So you can have an opportunity that has, you know, a huge impact, but for a really short period of time. It's kind of a big bang moment. And also you can have things that are maybe lesser impact, but you know, really have that staying power. And you can have both. You know, you can have the trifecta or the bifecta of really having high yield, high impact, high sustainability moments. So we tried to map a little bit what those opportunities have been and how we've seen them here on this map. And one that I'm going to come back to in a second is the core commitments for children as being something that has been really high impact and high sustainability within UNICEF. And then also things like the Oslo commitments, really high impact. Maybe the sustainability has been like a shorter time frame, but really important in terms of getting things going. So what are the results? So we've had some successes so far with our work on GBV risk mitigation institutionalization. And, you know, here is a list of some of those. One is the way that we've been able to integrate GBV risk mitigation into the core commitments for children. This is the core UNICEF policy framework for humanitarian action. So it's kind of, you know, the DNA of the organization, and getting GBV risk mitigation in there is really something that's going to anchor into, you know, the fundamentals of what UNICEF does. As I previously discussed, we also have had success of getting GBV risk mitigation into the strategic plan. We were able to use the Oslo commitments to really drive forward some changes within the organization. We also had a COVID indicator that was focused on GBV risk mitigation and the pocket guide. This was around making sure that staff and partners were making it mandatory for staff and partners to be trained on that. So really ensuring that some basics around GBV risk mitigation was integrated into the COVID response. We also have our annual reporting, which has shown an expanded reach of GBV risk mitigation efforts and interventions. One of the greatest successes that it's really kind of hard to quantify, but you know it makes you feel good when it happens, is when you have senior management request and demand information on what you're doing on GBV risk mitigation with no prompting, really showing senior management taking this on and really taking the lead of this as a core issue. Donor uptake, new requirements, which are always like so helpful, new advocacy from donors on GBV risk mitigation, similar to what Liz outlined earlier. And then some great, country level examples. In Somalia, we had multi-sector cluster owned safety audits. So clusters really taking on the safety audits across sectors. We also saw some interesting resource mobilization in South Sudan, where GBV and WASH were using WASH funding to do a joint project that addressed GBV risk mitigation. So these are just a snippet of some of the good results we've seen. As always, there's successes and there's challenges. So I think what has helped drive those successes is really finding key champions at the right moment and using that as a hook to get policy in place, really get something permanent in ink that's going to have long-lasting effect. The other kind of thing that's helped us find success is identifying entry points across UNICEF at multiple levels and really creating synergies across those levels. I think this also helps with barriers. If you have an obstacle, say at an HQ level, going around and working at a country level, or finding ways to kind of create those synergies to have maximum impact. What are the challenges? So to be frank, there's always challenges. And I think, honestly, some of this work is really still personality dependent. If you have an ally, things go so much faster and you get so much more buy-in. You have bottlenecks, sometimes there's bottlenecks at the field level, sometimes there's bottlenecks at HQ. So sometimes it's always, finding an obstacle somewhere in the system that really is the snag in the rope. I think there's still a question around what level of GBV specialist involvement is needed for GBV risk mitigation, and an ongoing need to cultivate allies. Okay. I'm going to stop there. Here are some of the questions that we're grappling with. And, I don't know if we have time for anyone to weigh in, ask questions, but, going forward, we want to take this work further. So today we're talking about our journey, but we're also going to be doing a learning series within the GBV reference group. And I don't know if folks are involved in some of that work or want to learn more about this project, but if so, please reach out to us. We're always looking for any organization who has a good example or really wants to think about this work, because in the next stage, we're going to be gathering examples of what's happening, and then also develop a resource package to help others who want to undertake institutionalization think that through and develop their own institutionalization journey. So we're really, really looking to see what else is happening and hear from others, because we know that everyone's grappling with this right now. Everybody's trying to anchor things into systems and processes. So we'd love to hear from you. All right. Thank you so much. Over to Jen.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for Liz also for your introduction. We don't have a lot of time. We have 10 minutes, actually, almost 10 minutes. So if people want to, you can raise your hand and ask a question, or if you want to make any comments on the key questions that Elizabeth said that they're grappling with, or if you want to just make a comment on the presentation, feel free. You can either raise your hand or you can just take off your mic and say something. or you can write the question in the chat. It looks like people are still introducing themselves. And
I see a raised hand from Robin.
in the chat. So if you have a question, you don't want to 50. Yep, there you go. Thanks. Wow. Who was just speaking? Oh, Robin Yeager. And
Oh, yeah.
welcome,
Yeah, it
Robin.
was me.
Yes, go
Hi.
ahead.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Liz. I loved that presentation. So thanks, and thanks to everyone who presented before. I have a quick question. So building on what you said was sort of an amazing and unquantifiable outcome of senior management asking for more GBV risk mitigation information and resources unprompted. Can you speak about what you think were the key elements in getting you to in that particular change?
Yeah, thank you, Robin. I'm going to take advantage of having Christine on the call because I know she's been in some of those meetings, so she can provide a firsthand account. Christine, do you want to answer that?
Sure, thanks. So we've had a couple different examples of it, and I think it can look different depending on the circumstances. Some of them have been related to sort of the stars aligning and different things showing up in the media. So once our stuff was featured in an Economist article, and one of the deputy executive directors happened to see it like as he was in the process of reviewing the strategic plan and decided to blast out an email to section chiefs about it. So, you know, sometimes it's just by chance like that. I think sometimes we have a lot of success with our donor allies raising it in different fora, and that sort of having a trickle down effect. And other times I think it really is just a testament to some of the advocacy we've done around what Elizabeth was saying. Like, it's not just about doing the right thing and doing quality programming, etc., but also that if we get this right, we are increasingly able to show that it means better outcomes for the sectors based on their own definitions of success. And so I think that increasingly our senior management is seeing that. And so it's like an extra incentive to push that along. So it's not a perfect answer. It's not a magic bullet. It's looked kind of different in different settings and different circumstances, but those are a few of the forms it's taken over.
Thanks. That was super helpful.
Other questions? I know we're nearing the hour, but you're Friday, so we still have enough time for another question. We have 57 people on the call. I find it hard that all of you are so shy. Because I know GBV people, they're not shy people.
And I think, you know, just to say this last question about where across the humanitarian system we still need more uptake. It'd be great to hear thoughts if anyone has them, or where we can focus efforts for getting additional buy-in.
And you can also write in the chat. No, no one? Well, I think this is very exciting, and just, you know, kudos to UNICEF for using your cluster lead agency to leverage your clusters within UNICEF. I see that Erin Patrick has an AOB, and I guess actually I could ask that. We were supposed to have some time at the end for an AOB. So Christine is writing some more information in the chat, and Erin Patrick, if you want to go ahead and say something, if it's related or otherwise, up to you. Go ahead.
Well, it's sort of, but not 100% related to this. But I mean, everybody knows I love the institutionalization work. so no questions. But I just wanted to say, hopefully most of you have seen that we've just launched the application for the latest cohort of the interagency GBV risk mitigation online course. This targets non-GBV specialized actors, so it's not for folks on this call, but I know that most of you work in agencies that have other sectors. So I would encourage you to encourage your non-GBV specialized colleagues to apply. We are not lacking for applications. We actually have already over 1,000. So that's not the issue, but I would love to see a few more applications, particularly from CCCM, WASH, shelter, and food security. So for those of you that work in those sectors or have colleagues, your agencies work in those sectors, it would be awesome if you could spread the word. And I'll put the all the application stuff is up on our website, gbvguidelines.org. I'll put it in the chat. And feel free to reach out to me with any specific questions. Thanks.
Yeah, and just to say, you know, in Budapest at our coordinator meeting, it was clear that our coordinators are doing a lot on risk mitigation. So, you know, this is also your opportunity to disseminate information that Erin is talking about. I know many of you do have good relations with the other coordinators from the other clusters. Also, Erin, do you want to say something really quickly about the COP that's for the non-GBV specialists? The community
Sure.
practice. Yeah.
So we have it. It's those of you that have joined know that it's been super quiet, which is unfortunate. And it's also partly our fault for just being focused on lots of other things rather than the conversations in the COP. But like the GBV AoR has a community of practice focused on GBV specialists and GBV programming, we have started a risk mitigation focused COP for those people who have completed earlier cohorts of the online course. It's not limited to those, but that's what we used as our, you know, sort of original pool. And it's really meant to be a space where, you know, shelter folks or food security folks or whatever can ask questions about risk mitigation within their own sectors. We'd love for GBV specialists to join that as well. I know everybody has loads on their plate and, you know, COPs can be a lot of work. This isn't meant to duplicate in any way the existing AoR COP, because again, that's focused really, you know, on GBV work for GBV specialists. Our COP is really exclusively on risk mitigation. There's info also on the website, so that same GBV guidelines .org website that's in the chat. You can go there and there's a slider that says how to join the COP. So thanks, Jen, for raising that.
Yep. So we had said we were going to have 10 minutes for AOB. Clearly, we don't have that. But if anybody has something they wanted to quickly raise as an AOB, or if you want to put it quickly in the chat, feel free. This is your moment. It doesn't have to be related to the presentations that were made today. But if you want to put something in the chat or say something, feel free to take off your mic and share. But I see a lot of people are having to jump into their next call. So if there's nothing, you can also, if there's an AOB, always write it to Shiva. And again, this recording gets shared through our next monthly update, as well as on our website. And I hope that you all also know that you can let us know if there's something you would like to be presenting on one of our calls. Shiva is the one that's organizing and scheduling. So if you want to present something, but you don't think you're ready next month, you can let us know which month you would like to present. And we always look for a combination of new tools or standards or information from the global level, events coming up, as well as people who just went on mission or something interesting that's happening in the country offices, and to have a good mix of people from the country offices as well as the global folks. And it looked today like we had a great mix, very interagency. So thank you so much for joining. We are here because of all of you and to support all of you. So let us know if there's any feedback you want to provide us, just send us an email to GBV AoR. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good rest of your day or evening or morning, whatever time zone you're in. Thanks a lot. Bye. Thanks,